Yeah, it's interesting how when we go through our own personal journeys and then afterwards we are more suited to help other people, and so it's like, I don't know, at least for me, I can be really grateful for the endeavors that I've had in my life because of how my experience now helps so many other people. So I'm just like, well, it's all right. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And actually, that's one thing that whenever I've been grateful for whenever I've worked any set of steps, is that I've always been um lucky enough to have uh people recognize that things that I did as a child, like I was a child, and so therefore, um, things things that I did when I was a child, like don't necessarily apply the same way as things that I've done as an adult. And even then, still, like if I were going to create my own anonymous group, it would just be called Adult Children Anonymous or whatever, because like I feel like that's the nature of so many of us. Yeah, because like exactly, like there's adult children of alcoholics or whatever, but there's like a lot of people that like their parents weren't even um a, substance abusers, that I feel like there's so many people, at least in my experience, that there's so many people that like we're adults but we have like children. We have our little, if I put like an 8-year-old face on that person, like that's how many of us are running around on the planet in these full-size grown bodies, but emotionally and mentally, as far as like our development was concerned, I feel like we weren't given the appropriate guidance. So yeah, I don't know. So I love that someone's actually taken the time to create something that differentiates between things that we had going on from childhood versus like responsibilities that we need to address for ourselves as adults. So that's cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'm like getting more comfortable on this couch that I'm on. Yeah, I have a lot of ideas about it. So what I hear is, um, and I'll say a bunch of this before, because you'll probably want to come in with some points or whatever. um, so before so I just caveat with when I start to say this, like maybe listen to it more in its entirety before we kind of delve into some of the individual aspects. But like that, from what you've described to me about his behavior, is that he's pretty immature. So, for example, you guys made these agreements at the beginning of the relationship, where you've said, hey, let's not have, paperwork and stuff on the bed and whatnot. And then for then later him to come back and say, oh, well, uh, I don't like this agreement. Like if your partner is agreeing things to you and even or with you and even saying to you that the only reason that he's agreeing is because he felt like he had to give you what you wanted, in order to have the relationship, I had to agree to these things that I didn't want to do. That like that's immature, because then we're actually not being authentic. We're not being our authentic self, and you can't really have a relationship with someone that's not being their authentic self. But then also another part of that immaturity is a mature person, and I totally, because I actually used to be this person. I used to be the person that we'd make agreements, and then later on I would realize that like I got the short end of the straw, or I didn't like what I had agreed to or whatever, and I just felt like, oh, I can't do anything about it now because this is what I agreed to. But I realize now, and who I am now, is actually a mature person can come back and say, hey, you know, we have this agreement and it's actually not working for me. I don't want to continue this, you know, I don't want this agreement to continue. What I would prefer is this. Can we renegotiate this agreement, right? Because now I have my wants and needs have changed, or maybe I realized that I was just being inauthentic at the time when I made it or whatever, right? But like instead of then blowing up and being like, blah, blah, and like having this like resentment that builds because I agreed to something that I didn't like that, it's just, that's a sign of immaturity. That being said, you know, you've told me about your own behavior. That's also very immature, right? But the difference, like your immaturities, at least you see value in the fact that, oh, excuse me one second. Okay, sorry about that. So that I guess then also, just that, that you're working a program of spiritual growth, and so, even though both of you right now are kind of in this pattern of, you know, feeding off each other's sort of um, behaviors, you know, it's like a dysfunctional dance that you guys are both doing, but you guys both dance together really well with that. But if you're gonna grow spiritually, it'll be challenging for him, and basically by you doing the work on yourself to grow to a place where you're more peaceful, he'll either grow with you or he won't. And yeah, like basically, you look lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so either he'll grow with you or he won't. And so, but either way, like as you become more spiritually fit, it'll be, um, it'll be, uh, I don't know. I feel like his side of it will work itself out where it'll be peaceful for you to just be like, okay, it's almost like he might not even want to be with you anymore if your guys' dance isn't working well together, but that you won't even have to figure anything out about him and you so much, as you become more spiritually fit, you know? So, and that's where when I hear that portion of it, I feel like, well, and that's where you have to decide, can I use this as an opportunity for spiritual growth? So, for example, he comes back and he starts blowing up and says, this agreement was stupid anyways, and I'm tired of all these rules and all these agreements we had and whatever else. And so, the first thing for I mean, you have so many options, right? But I guess the way that I look at it is to you first use the relationship as part of your spiritual growth. I think would look like you not reacting to that, you being like, oh, I'm, noticing, oh, my partner is really upset and acting really immature right now, right? Like this is not productive, or this is not, or this is disrespectful, or whatever. Or I mean, and it's okay for people to be angry, but what you're describing to me is more like attacking, of you when he's upset. And so for you to be able to actually, develop a boundary, to be able to not let any of that bother you, like where it's almost like you tighten up on not giving a fuck that like he's acting that way, but instead you can be like, oh, isn't that interesting that this is his emotional immaturity, or this is his response, and or this is him attacking me right now. And instead of you getting, because right now I think you kind of go in and out of being able to be like, whoa, like this is about him obviously, and not participating. And then sometimes you get into it and you get just as immature. But if you could work on, because if you just leave the relationship, you won't have the opportunity to do that, so it's, and you've expressed that you want to stay in it to do the work. So I feel like that would be sort of like the first step would be you being able to maintain your serenity and your peace in the middle of you know, his immaturities. No, exactly, and that's why the bottom line that you came up with for this relationship right now, well, one of the bottom lines, um, I would say, yeah, don't necessarily talk to him, quote unquote, about it. Um, until you have figured out, like, so you've processed your own thoughts and you've processed your own feelings and not shared with him any of your thoughts and feelings, like regarding anything, any of these abstract ideas about emotions and feelings and what the functional way to respond is and don't attack me and blah, 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 or whatever, you know. But like, until you have an actual tangible request from him, and even then maybe you don't have a tangible request from him, maybe the tangible request is from yourself of like, oh, when my partner acts like this, I'm going to remove myself from the situation and go for a walk. And then maybe you let him know that, hey, when and if you're acting like this, I'm gonna, you know, but like you only communicate like the tangible either request for change of behavior on his part that's like a very tangible like thing, or a tangible behavior that you're gonna exhibit on your part. um let me make sure I understand. What is it that you're doing that then he starts retaliating? What? And again, that's where I'd go back to you developing your boundaries spiritually, emotionally, mentally. Is if he is whatever his sexual behaviors are, you know, that's that's where you have to figure out where in your own history why you're having such a hard time having love and compassion for someone who, you know, it just basically isn't behaving the way that you want them to behave, you know. So but the whole you trying to wrap your head around it, in my opinion, is part of your disease. You don't need to be trying to figure out why he does this and figuring out, because here's the thing is like other people are allowed to exist how they want to exist, and they're not robots where we can figure out, okay, when I push this button it squeaks, when I push that button it squawks. You know, like there's no rhyme or reason for sometimes what we do and why we do it, and it has very little to do with you. And I don't by any means advocate that this is like this healthy spiritual thing to have moving forward, like for forever, of like oh, like we shouldn't care what, you know, what our partner's behavior is, because our partner's behavior impacts us, you know. But if you're saying, like you said to me, that you want to stay in this relationship and you want to try to do some work in this relationship, um, on yourself, then at least the way I see it, and I'd be totally open to some other ideas if you had some, but the way I'm looking at it is that you could, again, the tightening up on the not giving a fuck, right? Which is like you saying, you know, my partner gets to exist. You know, I mean, maybe you had a couple of bottom lines. You're like, okay, well, uh, if he were to cheat on me or something, then I would terminate the relationship. But right now, you're saying that he's either masturbating or using pornography, and you don't like that. Maybe the thing is to tighten up on, I'm not going to allow that to bother me. Or even if it does bother me, instead of me asking for him to change so that I'm no longer bothered, when he does this thing that bothers me, I figure out how to manage and soothe my emotions about it without needing him to change. Previous partners, I actually forgot about this until you and I had a conversation the other day. I actually used to be in a relationship with um, a partner. We were together for 2.5 years, and he was a sex addict, and he didn't want to have sex with me, and I didn't know why. I just know I would constantly talk to him about it, and I would say, hey, like, you know, I'm really unhappy with the fact that like we're not having sex hardly ever, and I feel like every time we do have sex, I initiate it, and it doesn't make me feel good. Blah 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 blah, and like we'd have this conversation constantly. And then after we broke up, he actually did. He came to me and he told me that the reason that he wasn't having sex with me was because he would masturbate to pornography instead of have sex with me. So I mean, I get it. Like, and I actually at that time, I in that relationship, I got breast implants. I mean, like seriously, because I didn't have a good boundary. I didn't have a good self-esteem and good internal boundary for like tightening up on not giving a fuck. At the time, I didn't have that. I got breast implants. I would try to like wear sexy things, and like I literally thought that there was something wrong with me, like where I wasn't like desirable sexually. So so I mean, I kind of get it. I know it's not the same as your situation, but I know a little bit about how awful at least that made me feel in that relationship. So no, and I'm so glad you recognize that, because I guess my fear for you is that because your patterns aren't as like blatantly like wrong or whatever, because you're not using the same methods that he's using for um, what we think is unhealthy sexuality, that it doesn't mean that your sexuality is healthy either. And I think that you're spot on when you talk about how even though um, even though you're not doing it in this like impersonal way, you're still gaining some sort of power or value or some sort of other emotional, you know, satisfaction that needs to be worked out for you to have healthy sexuality as well. Yeah, but I mean that doesn't necessarily it doesn't I think have the compassionate attitude like towards your partner. And I'm not saying that like what he's doing you need to accept as like a lifelong partner, like if he doesn't have what you want and he can't be who you want, and you can even still have compassion and say, yeah, that's, this is who you are and I love you, but this isn't going to work for me in a relationship, and that's fine. But just because your partner has to, it sounds like me, he's making all of these sort of preparations when you guys are going to engage sexually. And what I'm hearing is that he's having a lot of anxiety about your guys' sexual interactions. And you've even said to me that he would prefer for you guys just to not have sex for like long periods. So, so that's my thing though, is if he were to never change, would you still be able to maneuver around this and love him as a person? As a person that obviously from his own childhood wounds and places, who might never want to go there and figure out why or this or that, and might never want to be any different than he is, maybe he's but obviously this stuff comes from his own past trauma that somehow is affecting his sex life now. And can you still be loving and kind? And like we said too, is like we don't have to say whether or not, oh, I'm gonna stay committed in this, partnership and da 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 da. But at least right now, can I try to increase my spiritual boundary and strengthen my spiritual boundary by loving him and accepting him and having compassion for the, put his little 8-year-old boy face on him, you know, when you're seeing him in these moments and saying, and what he's doing really bothers you because it's taking away your power. That's like, can you tighten up on not reacting and still just having compassion towards him, and it's not going to be immediate, right? But it's like when you don't react, especially when he's running around, maybe being offensive even to you and violating your boundaries, and being immature. First, you just not reacting and like trying to get your place to you're like, okay, um, this is who he is, and just trying to like work with that for right now. But here's what you're saying though, right? So my partner recognizes that when we have sex, I'm happy for the next 2 days. And he knows that if we don't, or at least after 2 days or so, that if he doesn't do it again, then I start to turn into a raving lunatic if my partner doesn't desire me sexually at least every 2 days, right? And then you caveat that with, you would think if he really loved me, he would try to have sex with me at least every 2 days. But you're using that as a drug. You see, does you see how that works? Like that's this, so that's my thing is like good for him for recognizing that. And yet we have to really look at that thinking of, well, if he really loved me and he can recognize that this is what I need to feel happy and safe and okay in this relationship, you'd think he'd give it to me more. We need you to be in the point. You need you to be in the point. I want, God wants, everybody, the universe wants, whatever. You need to be at the point where you can feel happy and secure and serene and peaceful in your life, regardless of what's given to you and what's not. Hey, I have to let you go because the staff has to clean down here some more, and that's going to require them to turn on the vacuum. But no, it's fine. Have you started part one of the Breaking Free workbook? Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. We'll go over that at some point. I'll let you go, and I will chat with you soon. Honestly, if I could wave a magic wand and put anything in your heart, I would actually put in your heart for you guys to take an agreed upon sexual moratorium where you say for 30 days at least, let's just neither one of us initiate sex with each other, or like we agree as a couple to not have sex for at least 30 days. And then at the end of, but that's not your concern. So you're, well, I mean, you guys, I mean, I think you could at least journal about the idea of that, an idea, like, maybe journal about these, or also journal about the different options that you have when it comes to taking care of yourself, because this is where you struggle most. I know, I know. I'll see you later. That means we're on to something. Thank you. I'll chat with you soon. Thanks. Yeah, yeah, I am. Thanks. Okay. Bye. Oh man. Thanks for waiting to vacuum until late. I appreciate it.